I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 269 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Let it be enough. So this morning, because this is the season for it, I was taking a look at all of the Christmas gifts that I have already purchased. You know, they're kind of organized by a recipient and tucked into bins, like somewhere in the unfinished basement, right? For safekeeping and for hiding, really, and ready to be wrapped, but not wrapped yet. So I'm in sort of that phase of things. And I was just sort of like rifling through the bins and looking at what was in there. And I wanted to feel accomplished. You know, I wanted to look at this and think like, yeah, look at where I am so far in this season. But what I kept sort of silently muttering to myself was the phrase, do I have enough? Right? Do I have enough for this person, for that person? Is this enough? I mean, ew, right? Like, what is that? I cannot even believe that that was the phrase going through my head. How could I be sitting there looking literally at bins, storage bins, full of gifts, asking myself if it was enough? But it's the same mechanism that makes me look at my very full calendar, you know, that I have carefully curated and chosen activities that will be on there and ask myself if I'm doing enough. It's that same little voice in my head that questions the notion of enough. And the truth is, we're all probably doing too much, right? Way more than enough, and buying too much, more than enough. So the question really isn't, is it enough? Objectively, right? The question is, can we let it be enough? Why is it that we keep pushing ourselves past the brink, saying yes to too many things? I don't know how many invitations you've gotten this season to participate in things, whether they're social invitations or invitations to meetings, invitations to volunteer. I don't know how many projects you've been invited to be a part of, or assignments you've been invited to accept, or extra work you've been invited to take on. I've had all of those things coming my way. You probably have too. You know, why do we keep saying yes to too many of them? And then why do we keep doing too much in response to those requests, or sometimes of our own volition, sort of ignoring our own capacity, our own energy levels, our own time constraints, and just barreling forward like we're some sort of Energizer bunny with just limitless capacity? Why do we spend too much? You know, getting tempted by all the things, all the sparkly things, especially at this time of year, for ourselves, for our kids, for the other people in our lives. So I was thinking about that concept of enough. And what is it going to take for us to let it be enough? And that's what I want to share with you today. Just some thoughts on this idea of the word enough. You know, when I look at why, how do we get ourselves into this situation? I think first, of course, there are systems and technology these days sort of enabling this sense of more and this sentiment of never enough. I mean, let's look at something as basic as electricity, right? Back in the day, way back in the day, things ended when it got dark. You know, they didn't start until the sun was up, and they were done when the sun went down. I mean, unless you were, I don't know, sewing by candlelight or something, there's very little happening after dark. And now, of course, we can create this 24-hour productivity extravaganza if we choose to, just because of something really simple like electricity, you know, like having light available to us beyond the natural rhythm of the day. Then there's all of the communication technology like email and texts and the ability to be on the internet or to have Netflix in our homes 24/7, right? Like the communication and entertainment machine is creating this all-you-can-eat buffet for us of content that we can consume all throughout the day and all throughout the night, and we often do. So that's a system that's kind of underpinning this concept that's blurring our sense of what is enough. Because if there is more out there, right, why not have one more? I was reminding my kids of what it was like when I was in college and Friends was on once a week on Thursday nights. And you can bet we were all sitting on that sofa watching it. But now, my daughter can watch every episode that's ever been created of Friends over seasons and seasons, and she can do that in a sprint. So how do you know when it's enough for this day, for this week? How do you know when to turn it off? It gets blurry, right? I think the online shopping world, like the evolution to online shopping, has changed our sense of what is enough because we have, first of all, infinite choice, right? We have access to inventory all over the world to just options. And we're not only knowing about a sale or knowing about an item when we've intentionally walked into a store to buy one, we can be sitting here fully intending to work on the budget for this year, right? Or work on our annual plan for our company or our organization. And the next thing we know, Nordstrom is in our inbox, or Old Navy is in our inbox, or Joe Malone is in our inbox with some kind of alert, some kind of notification, some kind of sale that sounds tantalizing, right? It sounds so tempting to want to go and get that thing. And another sort of underpinning to this whole blurring of what's enough is, I think, our credit situation, right? Credit cards made it a lot easier than if we had to have the cash, and that was bad enough. But now we have Apple Pay and Google Pay, right? For these instant transactions. And I will admit to having gotten the sale notification on my phone or, something shoppable on Instagram, clicking through, and 60 seconds later, the transaction is complete and it's on the way to my house, right? 60 seconds is probably not enough time to be thoughtful about that purchase. Now, I love it when it's on purpose and I go into my Amazon account because I need new Nespresso pods and I can very quickly get those on their way to my house. That's a little bit different, but I'm talking about those reactive purchases because how do we know when it's enough? So those technological innovations, right? Electricity, the communication tools, the entertainment tools, the online shopping and marketing tools, and then the payment tools, all of those, I think, are in the mix. And I don't want to look past them because, look, we're human beings. We have temptations. We have limitations to our psychology, and those things are not making it any easier. But underneath all of that is our own psychology. And I think that's where we want to poke around to understand, why are we doing this? I can understand how it's becoming easier and how it's becoming more tempting, but what's underneath it in the first place? What are we doing when we are saying yes to more things than we have any business saying yes to, right? Whether it's with our time or with our money or with our energy. And I think there are three things that we are often doing that get in the way of enough. Okay, my friends, I have some big news for you today. After years of dreaming about it and saying, how great would it be to have our very own Brilliant Balance boutique, we did it. And the online doors are open. So if you love the podcast and you'd love to start your day with a Brilliant Balance mug, or add a little inspo to your office art, or cozy up in a super soft hoodie and a hat for those late to the bus stop mornings, head over to brilliant-balance.com/shop and choose something that will remind you that you are brilliant, because you are. And then I want to see all the pictures of you with your new goodies. So tag me on social media at brilliant_balance when it arrives. That's brilliant-balance.com/shop. Go have some fun. And the first one is, we could be seeking approval or praise, right? We want someone to tell us that we're doing a good job, or to say, wow, I don't know how you're doing that, or to look at the gift that we've bought or the thing that we have and tell us that it's amazing, right? We are human beings, and praise feels really good and approval feels really good. And so we can be seeking that out and trying to earn it through our actions or through the things that we're buying. And conversely, we can be avoiding criticism or disappointment. So I think sometimes we keep going to do the thing because we don't want the person who's asking us to be angry or to judge us, right? Or to be disappointed. Like if your child asked for something as a gift this year, what is it going to feel like if they don't get it to confront their disappointment? I think that's a mechanism that can cause us sometimes to go overboard. If your boss asks you to do a project because they really need it, what does it feel like to confront the disappointment or the criticism of saying, I don't have the capacity to take that on? That's a heavy burden. And so I think sometimes just to try to avoid that, we will say yes to things that we probably don't have any business saying yes to. And the third one I think that's in our psychology are what I would call comparison traps, sort of this notion of keeping up with the Joneses, only the Joneses are now everybody on the planet because we're connected to them through social media. So the things we see, I was scrolling through Instagram pre-holiday, like in, late November, early December. And I have a thing for those interior design bloggers, the women who just have these beautifully decorated homes and then they share really well curated photography or video of certain areas of their home. And I just love it. It makes me happy. It's sort of like when I used to buy Shelter magazines. And now this is like the new version of that, to just look at beautiful architectural features or design features in their homes. But boy, it can quickly create discontent with the things that you've put into your own home, can it? Right? And same thing with the fashion influencers or bloggers, where you're looking at the content that they're sharing around their wardrobe and thinking like, I always say like, boy, if I owned the stuff on my Pinterest boards, I would never have trouble getting dressed. It's just fun to go find those things and to be really inspired by them. But when that crosses over to then I'm going to go buy all the things that I've been inspired by, we can get into this keeping up, comparison trap. And we do it at work. If there's someone on your team who is always saying yes to the next project and the next deliverable, it can create pressure for you to feel like you're going to do the same, right? I remember vividly when I was in my corporate chapter of my career, for those 15 years, being part of a peer group and being very keenly aware at all times of who was saying yes to the projects and the extra work and the extra assignments and getting accolades for those and wanting to be that person. It's very human, very normal. So maybe it's worth sitting with that. If you're the person muttering under your breath, do I have enough? Am I doing enough? Do I have enough stuff here? Is this enough? Sitting with the questions of whose approval are you seeking, right? Who is it that in your mind is going to approve of or affirm or praise this decision that you're about to make? Or conversely, who are you afraid you'll disappoint or be criticized by? Who's the voice or the face that sort of comes to mind when you feel a sense of resentment about doing the next thing? Who are you really trying to avoid disappointing or being criticized by? And then third, who are you comparing yourself to? Who are the circle of people, the realm of people that you are comparing yourself to? And is it a complete picture? Particularly in that comparison trap, are you cherry picking, who you are comparing yourself to? And there's a psychological theory behind this. It's called the theory of downward comparison. And the theory sort of posits that people who experience negative affect, meaning they have a negative impression of themselves or a negative sense of self, can actually really enhance their sense of well-being, right? Their sense of like self-satisfaction by comparing themselves with someone who is less fortunate, right? If you actively say, okay, wait a minute, I'm spending all my time comparing my home to the Instagram influencers who are getting paid to share these photographs of their beautifully curated homes, where they have probably been paid to bring those items into their homes in order to promote them, right? That's my basis of comparison, or Architectural Digest or whatever. Could I think about what does the average home in America look like, right? Or what does it look like when your surroundings are in a third world country? And thinking actively about that can shift you into gratitude, can remind you really to just sort of see what you already have with fresh eyes. And that's a way to let it be enough, right? If we're seeking that affirmation or that approval from someone else, what's the flip? The flip is, can we turn our source of affirmation and approval inward? Can we become the only person who needs to affirm the choice? So what is right for us, no one can really know except us. And I think whenever I turn that inward and say, even if someone else wouldn't agree with this decision, or they would feel disappointed by it, or they would criticize it, how do I feel about it? And I'll just tell you, if that's hard for you to do, that is also hard for me to do. That is a hard thing to find that inner sense of knowingness of what feels right for me, because you can't objectively measure it. You can't objectively measure the concept of enough, but you can define it for yourself, right? We can do fewer things and give each one more attention. We can buy fewer things and be more thoughtful about how special or memorable they are. And that can become the definition of enough. And I'll close with this. If you just think about last year's holiday season, since we're in the holidays, and you think about the gifts that you gave or the gifts that you receive, which ones do you remember? Which ones really stand out? It's probably the really special ones that had time and thought put into them, or there was a really strong desire for them, like it had stood the test of time. You'd wanted that thing for a long time and finally got it or finally gave it. Or they're the really sentimental ones that had meaning, or they were the really silly or funny ones that, created a moment that everybody remembers when that person opened that gift. But it's not the filler. It's not the stuff that was picked up because you needed one more thing, or because you didn't have enough, right? Or because those piles weren't going to be equal. And that is also true with the way we use our time. The things we do with intention, the things we do because we wanted to for a long time, or the things that became silly or funny or sentimental, those are the things that we will remember. They're done with presence, right? With truly dropping into the moment and being all in, that we savor them. And that's the definition of enough in my book. So this year, I am reminding myself to let it be enough and hoping that you give yourself permission to do the same. Much love to you, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.